1.
Swimming into view. Hello everybody and welcome to the Resurrected Winning Review podcast. As ever, my name is David. This is episode 51 and I am sitting 15 miles across from Mr. Alex Aldridge. How are you doing today, Alex?
Howdy ho.
You ready? Sorry, not Alex. The best dad in the world.
Ever. I thought I'd get the
That's
dad
official.
stuff on the go.
Yeah, if you've got the mug, that means it's real and you are officially the best dad. There's no arguing at that point.
Yeah, better dad than Kratos, right? Although I could also be Kratos if you want.
Yeah, well, as we've discussed on previous podcasts, you are channeling your inner Kratos with that beard. You just need a bit more grey.
I've got the beard. I've got the big Greek. I don't know why it's a Roman nose I've got, but he's not Roman. Or is he? Next time.
He might be. He may be. He may be. Actually, let's just dive into that bit right now because it's kind of unrelated to the game, sort of. So the future of the franchise, Alex. So, well, we're talking about God of War Ragnarok today, by the way, folks. Well, no future games have been confirmed prior to release of the 2018 installments. This is the first of the new ones. Cory Barlog said that after the Norse era of God of War, future games could see the series tackling either Egyptian or the Mayan mythology. He also said that although the 2018 installment and subsequently Ragnarok focused on Norse, it alluded to other mythologies coexisting in the world, including Celtic, Japanese, and Irish mythology. Where would you like to see Kratos pop up next?
Where the hell was the Japanese mythology?
Don't know.
I mean, that's the standard weeb answer. I've got Japanese writing on my hoodie, so...
Do you like to see Kratos with a samurai? I think Egyptian might be fun.
Tell me what's Egyptian then? Because somebody else I saw say this on Twitter, and I was like, what are the Egyptian gods? Because Mum-Ra?
Egyptian.
No, that's from Thundercats, isn't it?
Mum-Ra, yeah, that's Thundercats. There's Osiris, Isis, Horus, Seth. No, that's obviously Anubis.
Oh yeah. What was Jason and the Argonauts? What was that?
Greek.
That was Greek, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've done that.
Why are they not talking about Roman gods? I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, Roman would be a fun one. I was trying to think like what Celtic is. Like, is that not fairly similar to Norse?
Most likely.
It was because like
we're all Terry Wogan.
We're all sort of like us Scots are kind of like bastardized English people mixed with Norwegians, right? And Swedish people.
I read somewhere that, in fact, it might have been Ash that told me that around the time that we got invaded by the Norsemen, Vikings, whatever, we would probably have all been speaking Italian because we were still on the come down from Roman invasion, and we probably wouldn't have been speaking English. We would have been speaking Italian.
Oh yeah, because that's long before. Yeah, it's almost like country origins, a load of rubbish because we're all the same, isn't it? Yeah, because like Bonnie Prince Charlie, he was Italian. There's like a big.
The fuck is that?
Oh, is it Bonnie Prince Charlie? He was like a Scottish guy. So he was. I might be making a mess of this, but during the Jacobite rebellion. In Scotland against sort of British rule. So basically there was like a rebellion in Scotland, like half were sort of allied to the king based down in England, the other half were Jacobeans, and they were sort of backed financially by the French because the French liked to kick off against the English throughout sort of the medieval era and just sort of try and cause problems. So they were financed that, and Bonnie Prince Charlie was meant to be the sort of rightful king of Scotland. And he was actually Italian. And he would Yeah, he would have an Italian accent. He would have looked Italian. He was born in Italy, I believe. So, yes, it all is not as it seems. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I would go next. I mean, Norse would have been my go-to. They've done the one I would have wanted, I think.
There's nothing else you can do there, really, is there?
Yeah.
Odin's gone. Thor's gone.
Kudos that
Captain America's gone.
Yes,
Hulk's gone.
Kudos for them to like bash this off in two.
Yeah,
I had fully expected.
They resisted the trilogy. Yeah.
Fully expected it to be a trilogy.
Unless they do one final spin-off with Atreus after he stepped to the other side of a wall and was never seen again.
He was
little nod. See you later, pups. Oh, I've done it again.
Drink.
Fucking hell.
This my volume is up. My voice volume has obviously gone up because I was testing this audio before and I had to get it right up in my face. Now it's got to go away because I'm spiking the mic so much. Anyway, nobody cares about that. I thought,
so maybe they'll go that way.
Yeah, Alex,
do like a quick, dirty spin-off.
Tell me about your history with the God of War franchise, because I was saying before we started recording that I had assumed, possibly wrongly, that the God of War OG must have been your jam, because it's right, like, being a man that likes Bayonetta and Devil May Cry, I thought the God of War thing would have been the Alex thing.
I'm just going to try. When did the first one come out?
The first God of War?
Yeah. 2005, right.
Yes.
So
March 27th.
That's very late, obviously, in PS2 era, generation.
Yep.
We obviously would have had the internet at that point. I distinctly remember I feel like I got this. Let me start that again. I feel like I got the game at launch, and I had some hype for it before it came out, but I'm not entirely sure how I was aware of it. Do you ever get that where you feel like, before the internet, how did I know stuff?
I think
probably television or magazines.
Yeah, my conclusion is that for the most part I didn't know stuff pre-internet.
That can't be the case, because it must have just been magazines, I guess, because I must have got all my other games knowledge from somewhere back in the day.
I remember, obviously the internet was a thing, but I wasn't like fully immersed, and that's where I get all my information. I remember probably the last game that was announced to me via video game magazines was BioShock. I remember reading a preview of that while I was at college on my lunch break.
Because I remember being really confused when we did episode 1 of Gears Intel, available now from all your podcast platforms, where I was trying to talk about how I knew about the original Gears of War, because I couldn't remember, because KDB was acting as if maybe YouTube wasn't really a big thing that would have shown trailers, but someone definitely showed me some footage of something.
Yeah, I remember watching the Cliffy B do he did a reveal event. It must have been at E3, and I remember watching a thing there and people really sort of raving about how visceral it was, because it was during the visceral era.
Well, we've kept that alive. We say visceral all the fucking time. But yeah, so God of War 1, I've loved it. Like, if you've never played that, and you want to be a complete and utter bell piece and spaff all your money for absolutely no reason, then buy the collection on PS Vita, because that is the way to go. But I remember, because right at the beginning of that game, I'm pretty sure you're on a boat and you fight like a Hydra, and it's just one of the most kick-ass openings to a game ever. Absolutely loved it. Played it like to death. And then the second one came out a few years later, maybe just a year later, and at that point we were talking you're full on in. Yeah, that's too late. I got it. I remember I took it to university with me in Aberdeen, but I had a 360 by that point, so it did just kind of feel like slumming it.
2007 on PS2.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Exactly. Yeah, so I've never actually fully played that, and I'm pretty sure that is one that a lot of people think is a really good one of the God of War games. I've played some of 3, like really tiny, small amount of 3, and been like, "Oh, this is sweet! I'm climbing up a giant thing." And
that's my takeaway memory of God of War 3 was the sense of scale. It really went for that. It had you climbing a lot of big things, like Shadow of the Colossus style.
Yeah. Was it after that? Did it come out after that? Yeah, of course it did, because that was PS2.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they probably did try and go that way with it.
So
I always maintained that I was a fan of the series, but just never really dug my teeth into it again until 2018, which we definitely gave high praise to in whatever podcast we were doing at the time.
First one, yeah, I'm big into the first one.
Yeah.
Apparently, because this is the reason I was going to ask you this, but it's probably there's no point, because I wrongly assumed you were a dyed-in-the-wool God of War man more than you were. But there's 15 games if you include all the remakes and sort of remasters and re-releases and collections and stuff. There are 15 games with the God of War IP, which are a lot of bleeding games. I'll give you a couple because there's some interesting ones.
Yeah.
There's obviously God of War 1, 2, and 3. Between God of War 2 and 3, though, there are 3 God of War games that came out. So there's God of War Betrayal, which is an action-adventure mobile game that's developed by SOE.
What the fuck was that on? N-Gage? Or that Sony... What was the Sony phone called?
Yeah, it was a Sony phone. It was a
the one that had like the
phone supporting the Java platform.
The flip out controller on it. That was a pretty sick phone, to be fair.
Then there's Chains of Olympus. I remember that coming out.
Yeah, what is that though?
That is just it's an action adventure hack and slash video game developed by Ready at Dawn. Narrative takes place sometime between Ascension and God of War, so it's sort of what's Ascension?
I think I've played some of that as well.
I'm not even seeing. Oh, Ascension came out. Oh my god. Oh, maybe I'm. Yeah. Okay. So Ascension came out after God of War 3. So which is also So basically, let me have a look. Sorry, I got distracted there.
Ascension seems to be where they kind of just were kind of kicking the can down the street a bit too much.
It was Ascension.
Didn't really know where they were
Ascension
going
was the multiplayer one, wasn't it? Yeah. No one liked that one. Sort of died. I thought that one had killed the series.
Yeah, I think everybody did.
Yeah, so the Chains of Olympus, and they had the God of War collection that came out after Chains of Olympus. The God of War collection
is that on Vita?
It's on PS3, and must be 1 and 2. Is it? Debuting as a flagship title for the PlayStation brand, and I can't see it. Oh, it'll be in the collections and remasters section. God of War collections, yeah. Let's see what it is.
I wouldn't have spouted all that shit about having to get a PS Vita if I realised that was on.
It doesn't actually say what this bloody is. Was the God of War collection? Let's see if it opened its own Wikipedia page. That'll tell us. That's God of War 1 and 2.
And that's on PS3?
Yes.
Huh.
Then God of War 3.
What's the one on Vita then?
So that is way down the list. So yeah, we've got God of War 3, then we've got Ghost of Sparta, which is a PSP game. Then we've got God of War Origins, which then we've got God of War Saga, God of War Ascension, God of War Collection, which came out in Vita. Then we've got a God of War 3 remaster. Then we've got God of War A Call from the Wilds, which is an action-adventure game developed by Santa Monica Studio. No, that's not. The Call from the Wilds is a text-based game that you played in Facebook Messenger that came out in 2018.
Fuck off!
And then God of War. Then God of War.
I am Kratos. What is your next move? I choose anger. Yes, you've already done that. What is your next move?
Always anger. Always rage. Always anger. So yeah, there's a lot of these games, but I don't know. This has gone. Sorry,
I feel like I have that, or at least I should have that God of War 3 on PS. I assume on PS4.
God of War 3, yes, or sorry, God of War. That'll be PS4. The original God of War or the original
God of War 3 remastered. Oh yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting God of War mixed up because there's multiple God of War games.
I feel like I want to have a go at that.
Yeah, I'm kind of want to just have a dabble with some of the God of War games just to remember how different they are.
But I swear they've given that away at some point on PS Plus.
Oh, they must be. I might
feel like it's got to be in my library.
Yeah, it's worth a look. This one, obviously, was released on the 9th of November 2022, and it's on PS4 as well, and PS5. I didn't realise it had come out on PS4. I guess that's still the sort of...
Yeah, this one.
This must be one of the last big PS4 games, right? Can't be
I
many
fucking
more.
hope so, mate.
So we can all move on with our lives.
Yeah.
Well, I keep seeing on video game websites that, he's got it. He's got it.
It's with PS Plus, so I imagine you will too.
I may have it too, although I don't often claim my PS Plus games. I keep forgetting to do that.
Oh, you silly soldier.
Yes. So this one has a Metacritic of 94 out of 100.
Ragnarok,
yeah. Which is an unholy high score.
Where's that put it? If you go to the...
In terms of the all times.
Biggest knobs, yeah. Stonecut's knob #1, which is my favourite hilt in the game.
Metacritic all-time scores.
Metacritic.
Best video games of all time. So, alongside hefty games such as Tetris Effect, World of Goo, The Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim, it's in the early 70s. So the highest 94 is Tetris Effect, which 71.
Wow.
So it's up there. This one's got it at 77, but they're all 94. What other? Right, so other fellow 94s, we've got Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4, Devil May Cry, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, NFL 2002, Batman Arkham City, Persona 5 Royal, Mass Effect 2. Just better, apparently. Last of Us Remastered, Persona 5 Royal, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 in the GBA is apparently better than God of War Ragnarok.
Would you stick your neck out and say that you would comfortably suggest that God of War Ragnarok is the 77th greatest video game ever made?
I feel
Would you feel comfortable saying that out loud? Come on, 76 in your head, go. Say it's around about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I'd certainly say that. Yeah, if I was to make a top 100 games, would it be in there? Probably. I think so. It was a very, very good game. The door. Yeah, I certainly came. Actually,
it wouldn't be knocking on the door, would it? It would be like sidling through a small gap.
Yeah, it would be sort of
mountain,
jammed up against the side of the mountain, crushed in on the edge.
Yeah, always letting the ladies and children go first.
Yeah. What was your
like Tony Hawk's 2 on the GBA?
What's your general thoughts of this game? Because I think I'm interested to sort of, because I guess peek behind the curtain, folks. I have just finished God of War Ragnarok about an hour ago.
About that.
I'm interested to, because I'm not fully sure how I feel about this game. No, that's not fair. I feel overwhelmingly positive about this game. I'm not sure. I want to sort of parse this out as we're going, because there's things that I did like, things that I didn't like, things that I wish they had done sort of differently. But I think as I'm sort of trying to tease it apart in my head, I wonder if a lot of what they've done that I find irritating sort of comes back to the big budget Sony game, and we spoke about this quite a lot. But before I sort of...
You teased it on the last episode that you were going to talk about that.
Yeah. What was before we sort of start going into that, what was your sort of overall feelings of the game? Now that you've because your dust is well settled, as opposed to mine.
It is. I feel like when we were discussing this originally, like when I'd finished the game, and when you finally came back to life after COVID, you were probably less in on it than you are right now, because I felt like you hadn't seen probably the best bits of the game, you hadn't seen the twists and all of the stuff. You were probably in just sort of the meandering middle part, where it's quite padded and there's a lot of side questing. Yeah. But I watched you finish it when you just did it like an hour or so ago, and you said something like, you said that was a game, or what a journey that was, or something. You said something that felt positive, like you were really satisfied with how it had panned out. And the end of the game certainly is pretty exhilarating. It leaves you on a pretty high note after going through the trenches in Ragnarok with a big fight of Thor and then Odin, and then a weird bit where you walk through a cave and say goodbye to everybody. And
I was like, where's this going? This is odd. This is like
run through the credit sequence when you realise that you actually have to press forwards or nothing's going to happen.
This is like Mass Effect 3 when you're going before Shepard's about to go off to his death. Spoilers. And you're going around speaking to everyone, or is he? And you're going around speaking to all your mates over the 3 games, just having a quick conversation with them. It was very odd. For the most part,
it did let you run away from it, didn't it? Apart from the 2 most like unrecognisable characters of the whole lot, I felt.
Yeah, the only one I remember
at one point I walked up and Freya. Somebody came up to me and started talking, and I just walked straight past. He was like, "Oh, sorry, I gotta go." She was like, "Yeah, okay, no way, that's fine. You go see your dad." But with these two weird elf-like dudes, like you had no choice but to sort of slowly back away into an invisible wall.
Yeah,
listening to whatever they were on about. Very annoying. Very annoying. I think I said to you before something along the lines of, I think this is an excellent video game that I really enjoyed playing, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a wholly memorable video game that I will go back to at any point, or would have given Game of the Year over something like Elden Ring. It won a lot at the Game Awards. It absolutely cleaned up, apart from like Game of the Year, which I'm pretty sure was Elden Ring.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, because that's when that kid got on stage and said something about, who was he on about?
Oh, I can't remember.
Somebody being fucking Orthodox rabbi or something. I can't remember what he said now. Fucking prick. But yeah, it's I think there was sort of a comfort to it where everything in it was so well made. Like, this is a proper like AAA game where they clearly felt they needed to pad out all the money that they'd spent on it and make every dollar count and give you as much game as they possibly could, which I don't think was in its favor at some points. But, you know, visually, acting, in performances, the combat was satisfying, the puzzles were fun, the exploration was rewarding, the RPG mechanics were varied enough to make lots of things viable. Did they not say something about, we want to make sure that you keep you can keep one set of kit the whole way to the end of the game if you level it up properly and whatnot? So everything about this game felt like I was just happily chugging along. Chugging along. That's probably why I finished it when I knew you were unable to play games without feeling sick, and probably shouldn't have done because I've forgotten a lot. But it felt like it was a game that I just didn't want to put down, but wasn't necessarily pulled in to pick up, if that makes sense. Like, once I got into sitting and playing it, I could happily. I mean, I played an 11-hour stretch of this at one point. I don't know why.
You maniac.
I'm nearly 40. That's absolutely nonsense.
You're living the dream. Is what you mean.
Yeah. But I think until the end, a lot of its purpose was slightly muddy. It was just kind of like kicking its heels. It didn't really seem like there was a lot of point to a lot of what I was doing. It was just a lot of like, Atreus is going to go sneak off, and while you do that, Kratos is just going to have a sit around and a chat.
Yeah.
Wait for him to come back. But towards the end of the game, it really picked up, the story really got going. But it's just a thoroughly enjoyable video game. Just one that is about the 77th best ever.
Yeah.
Rather than the best ever.
Yeah, and I think actually that's kind of what's sticking in my craw a little bit about the sort of midsection of the game. I was trying to compare this to other sort of large sprawling video games that I had played, and The Witcher is the one that sort of kept coming back to me, because in GTA or also to an extent, I think I said we spoke about this briefly, but the thing that was bugging me is that, like, and it's a problem with open world games of this type, is that they sort of set up a story and then you wander off for sometimes what feels like upwards of 10 hours, don't engage with the overarching sort of mainline story, and then when you come back to it, I'm a bit like, what was I doing again? Oh yeah,
and the game doesn't seem to care that you had this really urgent thing to do. But and actually, to God of War's credit, although I mentioned this on the previous podcast, where a lot of the dialogue, especially from Mimir, is very, very video game objective, description-y.
Yeah,
but they did do a lot of times to say things like, "Well, we've probably got time while they prepare the army. We can go and clean up some whatever." I mean, it's really like rote and trite. Is trite the right word? But what does trite mean?
Don't ask me.
But it works in terms of like it disengages from ludonarrative dissonance of. Yeah, we should probably not go and pick up all those fucking like pouches from chests in 3 worlds away, because Ragnarok's like over there. So they just kind of like, they do at least explain that away.
Yeah, I guess the thing that I mean, you might not agree with this, but I found is like, so like, I thought that sort of the main storyline and a lot of the themes which we'll come to were like second to none almost, and incredibly affecting and really impressive, like well written, well acted, really well done. The thing that I guess what I was alluding to before is like, you would do a similar thing in Witcher. You would progress the main story a little bit, then you'd go off for ages and you'd do side stuff. The thing about The Witcher is the side stuff was also interesting, and it had its own sort of self-contained story. So like the Baron stuff, or
I mean, nothing is ever going to come close to that.
No,
and nothing ever has.
I found a lot of. I'm trying to think of exceptions, but I'm struggling right now. You might be able to jog my memory, but most of, if not all of the God of War side stuff, other than the gameplay, from a story perspective, it was entirely forgettable. I don't think I felt particularly compelled by any of the floating spirits that I found. And
I didn't do some of those.
Yeah, I just found them utterly dull. And you're right. Like,
what about dragon fighting? Did you go do the bit where you free that giant island creature?
Yeah. And so that was quite a good one actually, when you were the giant island thing that you were free, and that was, I enjoyed that. That was a fun one, and I actually felt myself caring about the whale thing.
Yeah.
But what this game is going for, and maybe in a way that The Witcher wasn't, is that the side stuff you were doing, a lot of it ended up in a fight, and that's really where
all of it.
That's where this game really shines, isn't it? In his boss battles, and it's sort of making you feel really powerful, but shit's going down. Like when you come up against a real dangerous enemy, I think that's where the game felt at its best. And you were sort of we spoke about gameplay styles, and like I tried to make a build that was really rewarded you if you learned how to parry. Then when you could string your parries and your dodges together in a really like line, you just felt like you were an absolute boss, just tearing through enemies, and I loved that. But like there was a lot of the game where we're looking for Nornir chests, so we're going around smashing open hack silver chests, and then like there's near the start of the game you get back in a boat again, and I'm like, really, we're just doing this again? I just couldn't be bothered with that. Yeah,
they put that boat bit in way too early.
Yeah. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. Like my overarching feel, because it finishes so strongly, is very, very positive.
It does start quite strongly as well, actually. Yeah. When you're on the wolf thing in the Fimbulwinter, which to me is the silliest name for a cataclysmic event ever. I just could not stop laughing when they kept saying Fimbulwinter. It sounds like something out of fucking Fraggle Rock.
It does, doesn't it?
Like Barney the dinosaur would be worried about Fimbulwinter, not fucking the God of War with his big beard.
So yeah, like I don't know. I felt moving around the open world was quite, like you say, meandering, and there was often I would come off of like a 5-hour stretch of playing this game, and all I've done is walk up to something glowing in the ground, press square, and then walk to something else, and I couldn't be bothered with that. And then because it added stuff on, there was a lot of backtracking as well through areas.
That's what I was going to say. There was an area where you have to get to an abandoned village that I had to go back to, and I could not get back to it for love nor money. I got so lost. And then when I got in there, the trek back out of it, there was no gate anywhere near it. I think I spent an hour going to and back out of that one place to get one thing, and I can't even remember what it was. Draugr Hole, that's what it was.
Oh, slowly climbing up and down ledges as well.
God, there's no need for that shit. I think I said to you before, didn't I? Like, there'll be moments where like you'll be 10-foot drop, and Kratos won't jump off it. He'll have to fucking like climb down a chain. He won't even jump off the chain. He has to slide all the way down to the bottom like he's in the Ghostbusters tower. Like, come on, mate. You're the God of War. I've seen you been thrown basically an entire planet's width away. Like, you can jump off that ledge. It's fine. But yeah, some of the traversal, some of the side quest stuff. I mean, there's an area in Vanaheim, maybe, where you get like that whole sinkhole, and then you fill it up. You get the water to go back, and then you go into the jungle. Yeah. That's an entire like 2 worlds of side quests. There's no story in that. No,
because that was the bit, and I was like, oh, it must be near the end, and then I think it moves either side of recording or during recording. You told me that to go and there's like a thing that gets you to follow it, and that I should do it because it opens up a whole new area, and then I discovered this was it, and it just kept going, and I was like, oh my god, this area is insanely big. It's so big,
and it was all just padding.
It was, and you're right, it was all padding, but it was all padding of a similar nature. It was, for the most part, follow a trail and kill a big monster at the end, and it did it like 4 or 5 times within that area. And
yeah, it did. Well, there was 3 dragons to kill for a start.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is that like once
Two of them weren't even really dragons. They were just like fat lizards.
Yeah.
That well fucked me off.
And I guess this is also the thing that like I'm sort of struggling with, because like when I got to the dragon fight was almost always great fun. But it was a sort of
especially
journey.
when you can take them out of the air by lobbing a spear in its face. Love that.
The journey to the dragon, it just felt... it's going to be my favourite word for this podcast, especially for the midsection, was meandering. It was just sort of plodding through.
Did you feel like... well, I'll tell you what I felt. Because of all of that, I did feel at times as if they purposefully made Kratos faster than he should be. It felt like there was a lot of times where you could sprint as quickly as you could, and he'd fucking leap in the boat and smash it off the shore, and off he's rowing, and then you jump out and he fucking flies. I feel like they've definitely sped the movement up here because they know they're wasting your time, and they're trying desperately not to make the journey too laborious by making it so you can absolutely cane it. I hope
so, because by the end of the game I was getting frustrated that there's a bit at the end of the game where you've got to jump on the dog sled, and I'd jump on it and then I'd have to stand and sit and wait for Atreus to get his ass onto the dog sled.
Yeah.
Like, move it!
Did you ever do any of the fucking drifting with the
No, I didn't.
Sled?
Must have missed that entirely.
Yeah, I think if you press R1, he does a proper, like, fucking drift round the corner. I don't know why there's any need for that. There's not exactly like you're doing a Mario Kart track. It's usually just over a big lake of ice.
Are there any boss fights? Because obviously, like you're saying, this is the thing that makes or breaks this game for us. The Thor, like, what would stand out? The Thor one was
kick-ass.
So good, really, really good. And Thor is one of my favorite sort of. He's not the bad guy. What is he? An antagonist? He sort of rubs along the anti Kratos. Like, he was a really good one of those because
I absolutely loved Thor in this game. I thought he was such a cool character, so interesting and really well portrayed.
Interesting, well portrayed, and again, like, he felt like, because you knew there was a coming fight between Kratos and Thor at some point, and you were like, this is going to be big. I can't wait for this. This is like the two toughest guys in the series, just coming up against one another, just swinging bombs. I was really looking forward to it. It
was a very throwaway bit of dialogue, but there was a cool bit where he's with Atreus, where he basically says like something about his dad being Odin, and then Atreus is like, "Oh, what? So you've got an overwhelmingly badass dad who's a giant god, and it's really hard to live up to." Yeah, I have no idea how that feels. Yeah, and I just thought that's a really cool little parallel that I hadn't actually put together, like that Atreus and Thor are together because they share that same common bond, or common trope anyway. And but I just loved Thor. The fact that he's just a big fat drunk twat who is just he does fit into that model though of what you said at the end of last episode when we were talking about Wind Waker, where he's like a bad dad who's trying to be better. Yeah, he does fit into that, as does Kratos. Really, as does Kratos. Literally says, "Be better. We must be better." To Thor. Odin's a bad dad that doesn't really want to be better. Oh, you mean old George Carlin with an eye patch on? Yeah. And that's what I was thinking. I liked Odin as well, actually. He was a sleazy prick, and he was like a chicken shit heel. He felt a bit like... sorry, I'll finish my thought. Yeah, like, because I just feel like that's like the Sony thing at the moment. Because like Joel from The Last of Us is that as well. And Nathan Drake kind of was in Uncharted 4 as well, really. Certainly in the end moments with his kid and all that. Yeah, he was trying to be a better husband as well, wasn't he? Yeah, he kept running off. Odin felt a little bit like sort of 80s movie mafia boss, like from like sounded like kind of like Brooklyn or whatever accent he had. Trying to be a nice guy, like, but is actually just playing everyone the whole time. He could have been the dad of the guy who tries to sign Cassandra to his record label in Wayne's World. Just a sleazy 80s guy. Did you find that the sort of the dad themes, I find, like, when I was sitting thinking about it while I was making my tea, I actually find it super interesting because they had the sort of Thor relationship with his daughter, they had the Odin relationship with Thor, and then they had the Atreus relationship with Kratos, and it was all about sort of, you may have, like, people making mistakes or
I don't know, it was about parenthood, wasn't it? And it was about you, like, you're never going to be
Freya
a perfect
as well.
parent. Yeah, that's a good shout. And it was about, like, sort of Kratos was probably quite a shoddy dad growing up, certainly not a very loving dad, and trying to be better. And then you saw Thor sort of, at least when you sort of meet him for the first time, he's coming to terms and sort of getting better and recovering from his from what seems to be alcoholism. And then he falls off the rails a bit, and then there's that section where his daughter...
because we've killed his kids, do you think? Is that why he's an alcoholic at this point? Does it actually explicitly say why?
I'm not sure.
There's tension between him and the wife, isn't there? Because the daughter's all they have left, because we've killed his 2 sons in the last game.
Yeah, I don't know, because he sort of falls off the rails quite heavily when you have to go and get him out of that bar.
Oh, that was brilliant. I loved that whole bit. It was so fun.
And then there's, like, because I just found that chat between Atreus and Thor afterwards, when you were doing the mask stuff, quite interesting, because basically they're just... Thor's feeling a bit, I don't know, guilty for having fallen off the wagon and fucked up and made a mess and stuff like that. And Atreus is just like, again, talking about choices and how we've all got the choice to make better.
Yeah.
We can't change the past, but we can choose to make better choices. And I guess that also links into, like, because Odin explicitly says at the end, I'm not going to change and I don't want to change.
He does. You'd actually said that when he was saying it to, when Atreus was, like, lambasting him, saying, like, you have to be better, you don't have to be like this. And you were like, he's not going to be better, he's not going to change. And then he actually said it out loud as well. I'm not going to do this. I thought that was well good.
I just love that. I don't know. I ended up, I was quite frustrated with it at the start, thinking, oh, we're doing this bad dad thing again, are we? But by the end of it, like, they almost had me in tears just by having, like, a quivering lip of Kratos by the end of it. Like, when he was, like, having that chat with Atreus before he went off, and I was like, this is so affecting. In a way, I think I said it to you as well, that was like, it affected me more than The Last of Us. By the end of, because this is, sorry, I'm doing a lot of, like, pinging off in different directions, but without like, straying into spoilers, The Last of Us 2...
Yeah, because I've not played that, so don't spoil it.
No, I won't. The Last of Us 2 is a story about sort of hate and coming to terms with hate and forgiveness and whether a person can forgive or not. There's a lot of that in this, and it's like Kratos makes a big thing about talking about at some point during the big fight at the end, it goes from being vengeance to justice.
That's
and that
right.
being quite a big thing. Like, I think The Last of Us approaches a lot of these elements as well. I find the way that they did do it in God of War far more effective than they did in The Last of Us 2. And I thought it was really, really well done in this. Like, fantastic.
Even though this was based in Norse mythology.
Yeah. And
fighting dragons and shit.
Even more surprisingly so, given where this has come from. Like, I think, like, the writers of this game, I don't know whether it's Cory Barlog or whether he had a team of writers. I don't know how much he had to do with it. But, like, being able to turn this sort of one-dimensional, angry character into this multi-layered, like, moving story is amazing.
You were quite down on the story for a bit, but I guess it does, again, picks up towards the end.
Yeah, I was in that meandering phase, and I think that's going to be ultimately probably be my biggest criticism of the game, is there's such a fluffy, flabby midsection of this game that I think could be tightened up a lot.
Thor absolutely saves and carries the Atreus bits. I think that's part of the meandering middle. Now, you made a comment again on your stream that you don't want to play as Atreus in the next game because you didn't like playing as Atreus. Now, I don't like Atreus, but I really liked playing as Atreus. I thought it was really fun. Yeah.
Good.
Well, when I was watching you play, like I said, you didn't really seem to use a lot of the ranged stuff. So I was constantly throwing spears and axes at people, whereas you were just kind of getting up in the guts of it all with your Chains of Olympus. You were basically channeling the original God of War games, despite not really being that into them.
Yeah.
You were trying to play this one like those.
Yeah, basically I went full rage, just tried to get right up in there, do as much damage, and then keep an eye out for either the shield break, the parry, or the get the fuck out the way. And I just like that, because I got to the point, I had added a thing on to, so if I parried a shot, it basically covered them in, like, fire damage that allowed me to do even more damage. So basically what I did is I also had a stacking runes that increased my damage if I parried. So basically, for me to sort of take enemies out properly, I had to, the way I'd built my person was basically get up in their face and wait for the parry.
I had some of the some of the things I had were like based on ranged attacks. I think I definitely had something to do with like all the damage of my ranged attacks is increased, and obviously there's the axe and the chains both have like an opposite unlock where if they have fire damage on them or they're suffering from burn, then the ice axe will do more damage to them at that point. So you could really whittle them down quite quickly if you sort of
that was something I should have paid attention to more. Because
I was constantly swapping weapons back and forth because of that.
I found that I really enjoyed I was trying to just force the axe for like the first, honestly, like 3/4 of the game. I was like, I like these better than the way the Chains of Olympus feel. I just want to use the axe. But there's just came a point where there's just that little bit more range with the chains, and I was like, the type of build I've got to learn to use these chains. So then I just switched and tried to muddle on through. I probably engaged with a spear
for like gank squads when you're getting surrounded. Yes. I use the chains for that because they've got so much width in a circle. He's swinging them around, and then sort of one-on-one fights. So I'd probably stick to the axe, which I used to. I'd always sort of charge the ice thing with the triangle before I went into a big fight. So then I'd get the big freeze thing and then swap to the chains and start swinging. But yeah, so where we were before that, the Atreus bits with Agraboda. I think I've seen online people have been kind of taking the piss out of that a little bit. Where probably like the worst part of the game, I think, is we're all in agreement is like the little weird teenage date that they go on in the woods.
Yeah.
At that point, what we're actually playing became quite confusing to me. Like, what is this? Why?
I find her quite annoying.
Who even is this?
I find her quite annoying in respect that like, it was more that like, so like obviously it starts off, or the sort of big thing about this is like, Atreus, there's a prophecy that says Atreus is going to bring about Ragnarok, and then it alludes to the fact that during Ragnarok, Kratos is going to die. And
now, spoilers to all the listeners. Is that supposed to be when he breaks the mask and it doesn't happen? Would that be the moment where Kratos dies? When was that supposed to actually happen?
I'm not sure.
Because I couldn't figure that out in the whole end of the game. Like, so when was Kratos going to... What prophecy have we somehow avoided? When was this supposed to have happened?
Yeah, so this was the thing...
I'm pretty sure he's kneeling at some point, isn't he? And then his dad's dead and Odin has stood there. So I think if he gives Odin the mask, then Kratos dies.
Oh, yeah,
he
possibly.
And he doesn't.
Because there's like a few key changes as well, because they don't bring those two fire giants together. They sort of mess that up.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Just kind of puts it in his heart or whatever.
It's the thing that I thought was really interesting as they went through, because they kept saying Atreus was like, oh, we can't, the prophecy says, so we must do this. And the whole time Kratos is saying, no, we have free will. And then he's like, we do it because it's the right thing to do, not because the prophecy says so. And that's the key difference. Like, we might be doing the same thing here, but the motivations are important. And then when you go and see the Norns under the sea, they say they basically admit that the like prophecies and writing things down they're not predictions of the future. They are. It's like people are so predictable. People don't change when they have the opportunity to change, that we can just guess what's going to happen accurately because people are so predictable. And I thought that was a really interesting, a really, really interesting bit of the story. And I really enjoyed that. And I was trying to remember while I was finishing that sentence what we were talking about that sent us off in that spiral. Oh, because we're talking about the dads and the date that I found annoying. I found it annoying. So where I was going with that is that she was like, oh, this is what the prophecy says, so we have to do this. And then, like, the whole game was about telling us that the prophecy isn't that, and it can't, and your future isn't written, and if you choose to be different, you can be different. And she's just the whole time, she's like, nah, it's going to happen because I've seen it.
Yeah, she's a meddling little shit, isn't she? And no wonder her aunt wanted to stomp her to death.
Yeah, it's weird that they don't really come back to that and finish that off, do they? She's like, get out of my sight.
You can't get out of here.
Yeah, she never comes back. I was like, there's no resolution to this. She's like, get out of my sight, and she does, and then that's it. She's gone. They don't really help her.
There's a point where they almost allude to the fact that Agraboda's not even real. Or that she can't go with him when he leaves, doesn't she? He's like, I've got to go now. Yeah. She's like, oh, I'll just be stuck here then.
Because
and then later on, she just like bangs around with him. She's just like, "What's up, man?"
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Got bored of that.
What happened? Because like she says she's not coming because she's like, oh, the prophecy doesn't say that, so I'm not going. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh yeah, decided to just do my own thing.
She's basically religion in this.
Yeah, good show.
Effectively.
Yeah.
And then we go atheist at the end. Well, Atreus doesn't.
I think you're right though. Maybe I missed that. I think you're right with the mask breaking. Maybe that's the moment where he wouldn't have broken the mask. And
then Kratos would have died, because Odin is definitely stood above them in that drawing.
Yeah.
He's like stood there, and then they're like, Kratos is dead and Atreus is kneeling over him.
How did you find the other characters in Asgard? So we've got...
Well, you know what? You know who the biggest villain in all of God of War is?
Who?
Mimir.
Villain?
Was there ever a point where you did any side quest related to Mimir that wasn't based around somebody he fucked over in the past?
Oh, yeah, he made big
every single
choices,
one.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I was a right cunt to this guy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, seems like you were to everybody, mate. No, I think I'm kind of glad you're just a head stuck to my arsehole. Which I also had a thought as well, just as a real weird tangent, but every time Kratos gets knocked on his arse, after a while I was like, why haven't I been looking to see what happens to Mimir's face when I get knocked backwards? Does he sit on him?
Probably.
Does he like? Have they animated
he's
a
he's
roll?
just off to the side, isn't he? So maybe.
So he like rolls onto his shoulder every time.
Do you remember the bit where they talked about Atreus goes, why are you on Kratos' ass? Basically, he's like, why do you not want to face forward? And Kratos is like, we tried, it didn't work.
Yeah, and he's, did he not say? I don't know if they alluded to the fact that he doesn't want to be in his dick. I
don't know. That's what I was like in my head.
No, I think they said it was a lot of splatter, isn't there? There's a lot of blood spatter from all the enemies he's battering.
Because I was keep waiting for them saying, "Oh, it's because he kept bouncing off my dick," basically. But
yeah, that's what I thought. It was more just like, he'd be like that guy in Mad Max who's stuck to the guy's car and he's driving through the wastelands, just like a human fucking grill on a car. Yeah, that wouldn't have been fun. But yeah, Mimir's a piece of shit. Yeah. He may be a kindly old Edinburgh laddie now, telling lovely little stories and poems and trying to figure out riddles for the real ending of the game. But in the past, he was a right shit.
It's just it's another add to the bad guy trying to make better choices thing, which seems he's to be the ultimate. Every bloody character in the game. I mean, Freya's even that.
Freya, I don't like Freya. I don't like Freya.
Freya, you didn't like her?
Freya, no. She was too obvious. Far too obvious. Like, really pissed off. Comes round to it in the end. And then she's all like sad. And I must help my brother and I must bring peace back to Asgard or whatever it is because I've let everybody down. Blah, 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 blah.
Freya was the one that I thought was... There's nothing really wrong with him, but there was sort of no development in him. He was
some random fucking Nolan North bloke in the middle of the
a bit of a
forest
wisecracker that stayed wisecracking right to the end and then just died.
Yeah, useless.
Yeah,
did not like him. Didn't mind the fat South African, New Zealand, whatever he is, guy.
Oh yeah, the guy. Yeah,
the one who said was Bob Hoskins Mario.
Oh yeah,
that's so spot on. I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, what are their names? The two dwarves, Brock and Sindri.
Brock, yeah. Sindri was an interesting one that we briefly spoke about before, because there's he becomes a very angry man, but the problem is a lot of the issues are related to his actions. Like, there's never seems to be any sort of learning or remorse from the fact that he basically left his brother to have no soul for eternity through his own selfishness.
Yeah, which Brock was not happy about either.
No, because he couldn't go to the afterlife.
Yeah, that's right. Even though somebody says about the afterlife at the end of the game, like, sorry, mate,
you can't.
Sour news. I mean, I'm very glad that Tyr was not a real person because he was shit. He was an absolute wetty.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I was going to think. I'm not sure is Tyr the god of war in Norse mythology. I assume.
I assume so.
And so is he dead? Does
Odin
kill him, and he was never alive?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then he pretends that he was imprisoned, I guess, so he can infiltrate. I really feel like Odin wasted that He knew absolutely everything that was going on, and yet his only real response to it was put some like villagers on some cannons for Ragnarok, send Thor after you, and then fight you himself and lose. Or what was it all for?
All for naught.
Was Sindri's cooking really that good that you endured all of that just for an advantage you didn't actually use? With
we never
Valkyrie army.
They never noticed that he would vanish for long stretches of time because he couldn't be in two places at once.
Good point. They never really explained that, did they? Because you're obviously in Asgard as Atreus chatting with Odin.
And which means Tyr couldn't have been there.
Yeah. Unless his magical powers allow him to do two things at once and be two people at once. But that would be very weird.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Game's shit. It's not 77th anymore.
At least 72 now.
78th at least.
So we'll get. I guess that's sort of the gameplay in a nutshell. I'll give you a quick rundown of the general story plots, which again we've largely touched on it.
I'd say we've touched more on the story than we have the gameplay.
Yeah, true. Okay, maybe we can loop back to the gameplay. Is there anything? In fact, let's just start there because we're on it on my list. What did you think about the chests again? Were you happy with those? The addition of the spear. How did you think about that as a weapon? I liked how it interacted with the environments. Again, it was just sort of the thing that, and again, this is not an issue with the game really. It's just relates back to the flabbiness in the middle, making me go back to places I'd already been because it was.
Well, that's Metroidvania, isn't it?
Yeah, but. I guess because
you've now got a weapon that allows you to get through a path you couldn't get to before.
The good thing about
Metroidvania.
The good thing about like Symphony of the Night and Metroid Prime and stuff like that is that I find the traversal largely pretty quick.
Doesn't take 3 hours to get back.
Take 3 hours, so yeah, like there wasn't like a lot of like jumping on boats and slowly meandering through rivers or pressing circle to watch the game sort of judder itself into place so that you could lie down and go under a bridge that was really
God, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was so weird.
Yeah, it's just
it's obviously a loading screen, but fucking hell,
or
man.
Slowly sidle along the side of a ledge to get to places, and yeah, it was like the actual having to go back to places wasn't necessarily the issue. It was
it was just how long it took.
Yeah. But yeah, I did like.
Yeah, but I liked the spear. I liked how you could. One of the moves for the spear that I used a lot was when you got the L1 and you've got your R1 and R2 sort of two little special moves. One of them, he just throws the spear in the sky and then just an absolute hailstorm of spears would fall out of the sky.
I saw that, but I never used to. I had the quick stabby in lots of different directions, if you know what that one means.
Yeah. But the best thing about the hail of spears is that they would actually stay stuck in the person as well. So you could
triangle them.
Detonate them, yeah. I used that a lot. Certainly for like gank squads again, just would absolutely decimate them with that.
That's a great one.
Get in there.
Talking gameplay and.
But yeah, that was a nice. They had to put something else in there because we got the Chains of Olympus towards the end of the last one, and they kept it a long time before you got the spear, and they gave a good reason for having the spear because you had to kill that fucking douchebag with it, which was very satisfying to kill him. And even though he didn't actually really use it, did he just strangle him at the end? Doesn't he?
He strangles him at the end, but he also blows his arm off with it.
That's right, he does. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, because that was where I was going to be my next thing. Is like that was another boss fight that I really enjoyed. But I was interested to see from your memory what you thought about is it Hjaldr fight? Because he's obviously like the thing about him is that he sees everything before it happens. So actually trying to lay a finger on him was really tough.
Yeah, that's right.
I really enjoyed that boss fight because again he was another one that felt dangerous, but. There was almost a sort of puzzle aspect to this fight that I really appreciated because I don't know if you can remember, but it started off like you had to throw the spear at him, then make it explode while he was carrying it, and then he caught onto that, so you had to start throwing the spear in the ground and then like kiting him in a way so that you'd walk over the top of it so you could do it, and then he'd just get angry, and then you'd be able to fight him, and he got on his little He-Man cat with a.
Oh, so he did, yeah. That is a He-Man cat, you're right.
Yeah.
I think God of War definitely not suffers from, but benefits from the same boss style as Dark Souls, where the humanoid or human boss fights are almost always more satisfying than the big giant monster ones.
Yeah, that's a great shout. That is a great shout.
You think about Bloodborne, that the woman in the castle, the one who's got the guns and whatever, is probably the best boss fight of the whole of that game. And they're often a lot more fun than when Dark Souls tries to do a big old twat boss. And I feel like that's the same here as well.
Given that your game of the year,
like the Thor fight or whatever.
Given that your game of the year and I'm assuming one of your favorite games ever, Elden Ring, is so high up. Okay, game
of the year though, yeah,
certainly game of the year. How do you find, or sort of how would you compare the boss fights? Because there's similarities.
Easier.
To these. Yeah, they're certainly easier, and there's similarity. Like if the games feel very, very different, but there is quite there's some similarities here, right? In that, some of them can, well, again, they're easier, but they're quite tough. They're big set pieces. They're sort of really designed in a way to be different in different points. Yeah, do you know what I mean? I'm sort of stumbling over that. I just wondered how you.
Yeah, you got like the Nidhogg fight. You've got the big wolf. I thought most of the boss fights in this game were really good.
I just loved them as both.
Feel there were many stinkers.
They were challenging, but challenging in a satisfying way for me. And you're right, there were some very different. That big wolf, which we've not even spoken about yet. We've not spoken about the giants and their souls inside the.
Yeah,
inside the daggers and things like that. They're really different. Like that Hjoldir one was basically a puzzle fight. Then Thor's just a massive set piece.
It was fantastic.
Odin was surprisingly easy. I thought I was in trouble with him, but he was just nothing really.
But then maybe they put him to look that way anyway.
By the time you get there,
throughout the game, he is kind of a sleazy little chicken shit, isn't he?
Yeah, and I guess by the time you if you're sort of trying to tie Odin physically to his character that they're going for in the story, it makes sense to make him a bit of a letdown and a bit disappointing and a bit not as good as he thinks he is.
Yeah, he's like a Charles Xavier, isn't he, from X-Men? He's not a Wolverine like we are.
Did you think that Kratos was going to die?
No.
You never thought he was going to die at any point?
No, because they said about where we're going to go next already. Well, maybe we'll go to Egyptian mythology. Well, I thought, you're not going to kill him then, are you?
Yeah, I'd forgotten all about that. I was convinced they were going to kill them. Actually, it came to pass that it was correct, but I suspected I had spoiled the game for myself because I was looking up how to do a Nornir. The bit I was getting rage with is sometimes with the Nornir chest where you've got to fire the arrows and then explode. Sometimes I found them a pain in the bloody neck to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. Most of the puzzles in this game absolutely land, and I feel like a lot of the times they were pleasingly different, and sometimes they had a lot of environmental changes based on what realm you're in. The one that sticks out to me the most is like when you're in the elf realm, where you've got to do a lot of the throwing them off those reflective sort of purpley bits of stuff. I thought it was just, nothing was ever massively brain taxing. Some of it was based on skill as well. You had to do things maybe quickly. I thought a lot of them were great, but the worst ones were by far the weird purple sigil arrows, lining them up when they're on. Some of them seem to be on a timer. Some of them seem to have a limit to how many you can use.
Yeah.
The surface you can actually set fire to is vague. Did not like some of them.
Because quite often I was looking it up to make sure I was doing the right thing. Just I had to do it slightly differently, if that makes sense. But yeah, when I was watching how to do a Nornir chest, I was watching, and it was an area that I had Atreus with me, and I looked up the how to do it, and it must have been done post game because it was Freya was there, and I was like, oh, Kratos must live, and then Freya becomes your companion at the end. Something was happening there. I was like, oh, I think I've ruined this for myself. I think no one was watching me at the time, but I was streaming it, and I was like, I think I've just spoiled the end of the game for myself. And it turned out that I had,
Whoops. I can't remember what Freya was like as a companion. She was all right.
Atreus
is definitely the best one because you can make him fire like crows at people or whatever.
I had him firing like a pack of wolves at people, which was really fun.
Oh yeah,
Freya was fun when she would Valkyrie up and just basically slice through people.
Yeah, actually, that was good. The worst companion, obviously, is Agraboda because she just throws fucking paint at people, and that's it. It's like she's gone to playgroup and started a ruckus. It's like,
Yeah.
love, it's a bit more serious than that. Your aunt's about fucking 20 foot tall.
If we're talking love interest, I think I said it as well when we were streaming. I wish Atreus had gone off with Thor's daughter. She was way more fun than Agraboda.
Yeah, she's got cool tattoos as well.
Cool tattoos, yeah. Big sword.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Agraboda, like I said, she's a little shit stirrer. Believes in prophecies,
Yeah.
so she's bad news. No wonder Kratos is reluctant to let him go.
Got an angry granny still going about.
Little strumpet coming along, taking his son away. In Jezebel.
Can you remember the end when Kratos opens up the hidden behind the back prophecy that his wife has done? Is that, I couldn't quite figure it because it really affected Kratos. Was that just her telling Kratos to go and rebuild the realms? Is that what? Because I was like,
because he's being worshipped, isn't he? Like as a god. So maybe he's supposed to be the new All-Father.
Yeah, maybe
like the new Odin.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Because I was like, what does she want him to do? Go and be a statue somewhere?
Why is he upset about being the hero to all these people? Yeah, I didn't quite understand that either.
But as soon as they mentioned the fact that the realms had scattered around, I was like, oh, that's what I'll be doing after this game finishes. They'll be wanting me to go.
Yeah, because we broke all of it on purpose.
Yeah. Did you like revisiting areas? So like we had to go back and see the elves. I quite like what they did there because at the end in the first the first one, the 2018 one, they talk about, or they sort of allude to you, or you come away feeling like you had made the good guys win, and then you go back and you're like, oh, maybe they weren't the good guys, and then he's like, well, it's really just a perspective, isn't it, being a good guy? I thought that was pretty well done.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy going back? I've struggled with the elves at times when they make you go blind.
Yeah.
Eventually, I've got over it eventually, but yeah, I found them quite tough.
Shall I have got a quick ending explanation here,
let's
apparently,
do it.
But we'll get to that when we get to the story, unless you want to carry on talking about the areas first.
No, I mean, of the areas, I probably like the snow area the best. That was quite fun.
I did like going back to wherever the dog was. I think I said that to you earlier. The giant dog bit, Helheim, yes, was one of my favourite parts of the game. Doing that, the areas that are more self-contained, I preferred rather than the big sprawling ones that just go on and on and on. Lots of fucking boats and all that kind of crap.
Well, I think that's partly why I like the snow area, because you were on the dogs and they were much quicker to move around than the boat as well.
Massive Gears of War 5 vibes from the snow area. We just get on a sledge, go off and have a fight, and then get back on a sledge again. And there's nothing in between. There's no enemies anywhere. They didn't really do a lot with the fire area. What was that? What was that one?
Muspelheim, is that right?
Not sure. But he did more of that, I guess, with Atreus and Thor. Where he makes him go do the trials so he can go be sneaky.
Yeah, you can hear him having a good time while you're sneaking off.
Yeah, that was very odd. I guess that is the one fault that they were going to come up against with Norse mythology, is that it's limited to 9 realms and that's it, and they've done most of them already.
Yeah.
So back we go.
Let's go through them all again. I do like that. So there's bits.
It's a beautiful game. We shouldn't go without saying that everywhere looks incredible.
I do think there's something nice about sort of nods to previous areas. Like there's plenty of games, especially when it spans different console generations. Like very often, I'm trying to. I mean, there's lots of examples. So I don't know why I'm struggling right now, but there's lots and lots of games in which they'll create a world and then the sequel, because technology's changed so much or whatever, but the same areas look vastly different to how they did previously. I like that. So you went to Helheim. There's in God of War 2018, there's a section where you're on a big sort of barge, like a big boat, fighting off waves of enemies. And when you come back to that area in Ragnarok, and you see the boat that you were on sort of crashed and wrecked upon I don't know, a bunch of icebergs and stuff. I like the little nods to the different areas, and then there's the bit where the snake used to be, that's all snowy, and then you go back into the world tree and it's all wrecked and stuff like that. That area is like for like remade just to be the same, and I thought that was really cool. It's just sort of like, oh, remember when we did that? Yeah, I quite like that.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I probably didn't give enough thought and respect to that at the time when I was playing it, but that was cool.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell us this ending? I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, it doesn't tell us anything. Excuse me, it doesn't tell us anything we haven't just said. It just says there's a glimpse into Kratos' future where he sees himself being worshipped by the masses. It doesn't say which masses and why. I guess because they just say afterwards we need to go rebuild. I guess that's what it is.
I hope Freya goes back and relights the fire of her little house turtle that seemed to be having a bad time when Atreus.
Oh yeah, yeah, me too.
Because I quite like that guy.
Yeah, I forgot about that. God, that was ages ago.
Yeah, so long ago. There's so much that happens in this game. There was
really, it was like 60 odd hours, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was absolutely huge. One of the biggest ones we've ever done for this podcast.
There's the bit we played/watched it before this podcast, where you're going to Brock's funeral, and it takes you back like meandering again through an area that you do like right near the start of the game, and I was like, I forgot this place even existed. It was so long ago. There's a lot of that. Again, it's both the best thing about it and the worst thing. Some of the worst things about it. Best thing about it is there's a lot of game there.
There's a lot of game with a hell of a lot of detail, like the design of everywhere you go, the little markings that are on all the walls, and there is so much thought put into every area. It's so deep if you kind of take a time to look around rather than just get up in the fights all the time. The effort they put into design the world is absolutely fantastic. It's just they felt obviously the need to make everything in the world have some relevance to something. So, as we said earlier, it just kind of bloats itself needlessly. It doesn't need to be 60 hours long.
No, and I don't know. This is the thing. Is like
no game does.
This is the thing. Is like there's a lot of stuff to do in there, and I'm just not convinced it all needs to be there, or needs to be there in that fashion. Like you're saying, there's lots and lots of fights. The fights, for the most part, are fun. Do we need to wrap that up inside a game that's making me travel back and forth over different areas that I've already been to? I'm not sure. Like you spoke, we haven't touched on this yet, but you had quite a good time with the trials. Is that right? I mean, could they have built that out so just to try and get people to the fights a bit more? I don't know. And this is the thing that like part of the frustration that's coming is I just think like Ubisoft have been criticised quite a lot recently for all their games slowly becoming the same open world thing. I'm sitting here looking at this and I'm thinking about the games that they're making, Sony, the big budget games now, especially sort of when we wrap this up in amongst them having raised the price to £70/$dollars for the game. And I wonder if the sort of Sony business decisions are perhaps to blame for the things that are annoying about this game, i.e. like we've upped the price of the game. Because we've upped the price of our games, we need to make sure that people aren't feeling shortchanged, i.e. we need quotation marks content, and it's almost like they've thought we need to put content in here at any cost. And I think you also couple that with like the Sony controllers obviously doing some really interesting things with the triggers and things like that, and having they've also got the mouse pad type thing in the middle. Every so often, God of War Ragnarok would make you interact with these things on the controller, but at no point did they ever do it in a meaningful way, and they did it so few. It was done so few and far between that it almost felt like, oh, this is just a tick box that we've got to do. We've got to have the sticky triggers. We've got to have.
They only ever really did that when he was just hacking away at ice, and that was it.
Hacking away at ice, and then there's the bit with Brock where you've got to kill an enemy and run up and hack away at a stone to give to Brock so that he can, I don't know, fix the lift so that you can go underwater and see that mermaid thing.
So you see his little girlfriend,
Yeah. And then there's like one part in the game that jumps to mind where where you're walking around with Faye. There's lots of Effie's named people in this game. Faye, Kratos' wife, and she's obviously
I hated all those bits.
Putting her hand on the tree to do her enchantment so that Thor and that can't find Atreus and him when she dies. And that's the only time in the game it's like, oh, swipe right on the mouse pad bit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Why are you making me do this? It just feels so out of place. It doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And then when I think that at top, and I think about what's the other game that's just come out? That's the big Sony first party game. The girl. Why am I blanking on that?
Forspoken.
No, it's there's two of them out, and you've got it's like a sort of fantasy world with robot dinosaurs.
Horizon.
Yes,
Horizon. That's Zero Dawn.
That game. There's a lot of similarities between that and God of War in that it's just a sprawling open world game that is rammed to the absolute gunnels, filled with side quests and tick box check off things that you've got to do, collection events and things like that. And I'm just like, is this what you think? You've obviously tested this to within an inch of its life. And then I think about there's sections of open world in Uncharted is probably too old to have come up against that. But then when I think about The Last of Us Part 2, the first sort of chunk of the game is an open world section, and then they bin that off, and then it just sort of reverts back to type again. And that bit's always stuck out in my head, and it's like, was this initially going to be an open world game that they decided to change direction on because it just sticks out so badly in comparison to the rest of the game? And that's just made me think, like, is this... And then Days Gone's another open world game, and it's just like, is this what...
Yeah, that's an unabashed one, yeah.
Is this what you think sells now, and is this what every game has to be? So, like, to sort of round that off, I just wonder if, like, God of War is obviously a fantastic game, but the things that annoy me about it are also things that make me wonder, are these just things that Sony have decided that their games have to have? Does that make sense? In a long... I know that's an overly long-winded way, but hopefully I got my point across.
Yeah, obviously they do have they have literal check boxes on every world and every area of every world. Like, have you done the Draugr Hole? Have you done the Ravens? Have you done the Normir chests?
Have you the hidden treasure, which is just go up to something and press square?
Yeah, because you found a treasure map. I never once looked at a treasure map, and I never once didn't find the treasure.
No,
just there it is. Glowing thing on the floor that you've and that's the thing with God of War, is that it's not really open world apart from 2 bits of sleds. Everything else is quite funneled through just what are corridors. They're just not inside, so they don't look like corridors.
It's the Gears basically of War 5 one, isn't it? It's like it makes it feel open world, but what you're doing is you're just traveling to different
you're just
sections.
There's just no loading or no gaps between any of the action. It's not open world. You just have to walk everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere in this linear game. But also the game will take you to this world and then back again. But every time you're in there, the only side quests you're going to come across are ones that will make you just go left for a bit instead of right. And then you'll meet back up where you were going, or you'll backtrack a little bit and off you go. And there's a few Metroidvania bits where when I come back here later, I can go up that cliff. And the only thing that's up that cliff is like a treasure chest. It's not like a new area is open. It's just there's loot up there that you'll get later for some reason.
But which will just be hack silver or a crafting component that is on the checkbox, so you feel like you've got to go and do it if you're that kind of player.
And don't come back too late, because you'll get gear that's fucking worthless at this point in the game. Yeah. You won't even use it, and you'll just sell it.
But yeah, I don't want to be overly negative. I think there's
there's not too much negative to say, really.
No,
I would say.
Did you ever, when the game finished, were you ready for the game to be finished? Can you remember? Yeah.
That wasn't a joke, by the way. When I was typing to you while you were playing it on Twitch, where it said Beyond Ragnarok, and then I said Alex trades the game in. That's actually what I did. It's already gone.
Oh, it's already gone.
Yeah. As soon as I finished it, whipped it out in a box, off to CEX, get myself some trading value ready for Dead Space.
Good man. Good man. You'll never need to play again.
Too many fucking games to play.
There's never.
So I'm not going to go looking for shit in God of War anymore.
I think that's
I played it for 60 hours.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I need to give myself a bit of a shake about. Is like, there's so many games I want to be playing just now. Do you really want to go back to a game that you've wrung the life out of? You've got all the story. All you're doing is sort of checkbox and stuff. And I'm not going to do all of the checkbox and stuff. So why even try and do any of it?
Exactly. Because I only got those challenges you were talking about a minute ago in Muspelheim or whatever it is. So, I didn't enjoy them. Some of them were okay, but for the most part, they're a slog. And the worst part is that after you've done the first like run through of the challenges, there's like a big sword in the middle, and you have to like do the challenges again. I think you can. It seemed to let you pick any that you want, and then it would fill up the sword. And once the sword was filled up, you then do like a mini boss fight, or sometimes a boss rush. God. And that's how you'd get the bits of armor. So, for example, there's like 6 challenges normally, I think. 2 in each. So there's like three split paths.
Swords with 2 each in it, yeah.
And then there's a big sword in the middle. So once you've done all 6 of those first ones, you've got a big sword in the middle. That you have to light up letters on that. And to do that first time around, you've got to do 2 challenges. Then you've got to do 3 challenges. But they're not new ones. You just go back to one of the ways again, pick whichever one you want to do again, and then do that. And then do another one again, do another one again, and then you unlock a boss fight, and that's how you get that armor. So I was like, this is ultimate padding. Just fucking bollocks padding. And the Berserker fights, I guess they were trying to do the Valkyrie from the first game. They're trying to recreate that. But I didn't enjoy a lot of them. Most of the time I got absolutely battered until I came back way later and then just absolutely wasted them. But at that point, it became not fun because it was just like too easy. So it's either impossible when you get the purple health bar or whatever it is, or the skulls on that you were saying, or they've got a green health bar and you're like, well, I'm going to smash him then.
Yeah.
I think I maybe even took a video of it. I suppose that is part of video games, though, isn't it? It's like a power fantasy. Now I'm strong enough to whoop your ass. There should be some satisfaction in whipping your ass. And I guess I did get that to an extent. And I do like how God of War, every major fight basically forces you to end it with a R3, L3 button prompt where you get to see Kratos do a finisher on him.
There is only so many times I can watch him rip the bottom of the jaw off a sort of werewolf.
I fucking loved that. Especially as it like slumps on him, it just like pushes it off at the end, like, get off. Corpse. But yeah, some of them were great, but yeah, you're right. They are... But there's only one per enemy, so you could see multiple of the same one over and over again.
I am beginning to struggle, and I think maybe I just need a little bit of a break from having to do it. But I am starting to struggle with, and this is the reason I've probably never gotten a Monster Hunter. I'm just finding it hard to just like batter animals in video games at the moment. Like I find it some of the times you were coming up against animals in this game, and it was like making me kill a wolf and stuff that basically just didn't know what it was doing. It was just being a wolf. It was just being itself, and you're like coming in like absolutely flailing. And I was finding that a bit of a drag. But I know that
you can kill every single animal in this game as well. Even the ones that like little chickens or things climbing up trees and walls. You can throw an axe at them and squish every single animal, which I guess is realistic, but
yeah.
Is that needed?
I just find it a little bit tough after a while because it's like there's a lot of like bad people in this game. I don't think we need to be killing animals that aren't really that bad. They're just being themselves. It's like an animal's just being an animal, even if you've decided it's a monster. Yeah, I struggled with that a little bit, but I know that's a personal thing. At the end of the day, it's a game. It's not real. So,
well, there was something that I really didn't like a game where I had to do that. Does this game make you hunt something right at the beginning?
The first one makes you go hunting a deer. God of War 2018, you got to kill a deer.
Yeah, there's definitely a game I've played recently that, like, right at the beginning, it makes me hunt something, and I was really uncomfortable with that.
Atreus injures it, and then you've got to go and like kill this injured animal.
Yeah, I don't like hunting in games ever.
No, I don't like doing it. But yeah, I can say it's just that's a personal thing. I'm just going to. We've largely covered all this, but I want to just sort of neatly put a bow on the story. So I've written a rough plot outline, and maybe we can touch on, and maybe it'll like jog our memory and have a chat about different things in it. But basically, God of War Ragnarok game follows the journey of Atreus, Kratos, and his companions from the end of a winter called Fimbulwinter towards a prophesized Ragnarok, which is meant to be the end of the world for gods and men. And this is part of the reason that I think maybe Ragnarok doesn't actually happen in the end, because you're sort of tasked with rebuilding the world, and men are still alive and gods are still alive at the end of the game. So I'm assuming Ragnarok doesn't actually happen, and you do avert it. And maybe that's partly because you don't do the proper monster. You do a sort of weird half version of the monster.
And I guess the Atreus with the mask was part of the Ragnarok as well. True, I assume.
Yeah. There are a few overarching themes in the story. From the main plot line of the coming of Ragnarok to the development of a relationship between Atreus and Kratos' journey as a father, Atreus becoming his own person, making his own relationships, and then them both working hard to make positive change within themselves. The game often juxtaposes this with either parental relationships, from Thor's toxic relationship with his own dad, to him trying and failing not to pass on the same toxicity to his own children, and then his battle with alcoholism. I'm sure I've missed some themes in there, because there's a lot. Next up, I've written down, Alex, can you think back about what, if any, were some of the themes that were resonated most with you that we haven't spoken about so far? Maybe ongoing narratives and stuff. You spoke about Freya. The other one I wanted to touch upon is I found the Atreus relationship with animals pretty moving. Fenrir, his wolf, absolutely killed me at the start when he dies.
Yeah. That's what it was. There was this game where the dog dies at the beginning. That's what it was.
That had me in tears, and it was just like within the first 10 minutes, I was like, I can't do this. This is going to be heavy. And I think that probably, because it was such a heavy opening, is partly why I maybe find it such a slog for a little bit. I obviously eventually sort of righted the ship and came good, but then like Fenrir dies, and then not long after that you meet this whale that is this tormented soul that has basically just had its entire existence living in this horrid cage, essentially. And I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. But yeah, it sort of rights the ship and carried on. But the animal stuff, I suppose it's deliberate, but I found it tough. There's a line in it that I actually, again, there's a few times this game had me in tears. And it's part of the reason I wanted to ask you about this is because you're a fairly new father and I'm not. So I wondered if it had affected you in some way that it maybe didn't me. But there's a bit where is it Freya says, or someone says, I'm actually almost greeting talking about it, and I don't know why it's upset me so much. The natural sort of the culmination of loving something completely is grief. And
that was a
something shows that you've actually loved, and that is important, and that just ruins me. It really upsets me thinking about that, and I don't know why.
I remember that line very vividly. That was a really profound bit of, again, throwaway dialogue in the game. It was just holy shit.
How did you find the dadness of the game? Like, obviously obviously you're not.
Well, I'm not an alcoholic and I don't have a son, so I guess partly it didn't necessarily tug at me.
I mean, I guess there's like one of the things that I guess the game talks about at the end is like, and obviously you're a long way from that, but part of the job of being a dad is to prepare your children for life when you're no longer there. And then there's like
prepare yourself for when they're no longer here, when she goes away somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And the bit that jumps out to me is a bit I played earlier today when Kratos is in his tent before the night before the big battle, and Atreus comes in and says, "Can I sleep with you?" And he starts telling him a story, and he's just basically looking at this kid that has become a warrior in his own right. And I guess Kratos suspects he might not see another day beyond the next one.
Maybe, yeah.
So I guess it's not really resonated with you in any way.
It resonated with me, I guess, in terms of like
particular way. Sorry,
that it was that it was
properly.
Definitely very well written and performed, convincing relationship between these two people. Certainly better than the relationship between Kratos and Faye, which largely just existed and was confusing why she would love him, because he's just clearly very devoted, clearly very desperate to protect and keep his family safe, but the emotional side of Kratos with her always just seemed like he just felt like really solemn while she just spoke out.
That's the thing that maybe I struggled the most with, is I struggled to see, obviously the writers did a good job of building emotion into this game, but I struggled to see how Kratos even finds himself with these relationships.
Didn't get that either.
Could you imagine
Kratos? What did he do? Did he go on fucking Norse God Tinder and be like,
just sort of
swipe left on Freya, swipe right on Faye, or whatever way around it is.
It's just I found that tough.
That was a bit. I couldn't get my head around that either. And I guess I found Atreus a little bit annoying as well.
Yeah,
because he's very, very bossy. He's very bossy of Kratos. Like, even in the minor moments, it was always. I know that again. That I've already spoken about, like Mimir being like this, and I know it is a video game, and I'm not necessarily saying it's the worst thing in the world to have people in the game tell you what to do or where to go, but it felt like Atreus was guiding you around all the time because that's what they want. They want that to be helping the player get to. Oh, I don't know. I didn't see it as anything that they'd done from a storyline perspective. It was more just like, we need to guide the player to the right place without putting a giant arrow saying, go this way. So it just felt like Atreus was always like, right, let's go this way. Time to go this way. Unless you want to go over there. I'll go over there if I fucking want to go over there. You're my son. Belt it. Like, belt up, mate. So, yeah, that was... I guess I found... I did like the stuff, like you say, of him with animals. That was the most endearing part of his character. And the bit where the whole wolf bit, as I said, the giant wolf... was amazing in so many ways, from a spectacle standpoint, from a story standpoint, from an emotional standpoint. And when it gets to put the soul of your dog back in it, and then you go back and you see him at your own home, that was fantastic. Like that was some of the best bits. But the relationship between Atreus and Kratos was absolutely carried by Christopher Judge, no question. He did all the heavy lifting in that, in terms of like the nuances of his character, which can be just, you could just play it off as, I'm going to talk like this, and I'm very sad and angry.
So well though,
but to get as much emotion out of that, having to do that voice and be that character, and to do it as well as he did, is an astounding achievement. And Atreus was just more like just a sort of a nagging constant, where he's always telling Kratos, oh, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to go here, this is this and this is that, and don't worry, you have to trust me, I trust you, you have secrets. And yeah, that is the point. And you were definitely worried beforehand as well, weren't you, when you were saying, oh, I worry that I'm going to get annoyed by Atreus, he's going to be like an annoying teenager and it's not going to carry the story properly. But again, towards the end, I think that became less of an issue, and it really came together.
It did, and actually I think I came away finding Atreus was more annoying in the first game than he ended up being in the second game. He was a lot more mature than I was expecting him to be. So there's a lot of the first game where after Atreus discovers that he's a god, and he's like, oh, why can we not just do this? And he's like, because it's not right. And he's like, but we're gods, we can do whatever we want. And I was like, oh, so we're going to have a lot of that. But no, he had sort of already moved on from that by the time we meet him in Ragnarok.
And if anything, Kratos is the one who's slightly more impulsive and less,
certainly blinker,
considered,
like one-track minded.
Yeah, whereas Atreus is more the one who's thinking about the bigger picture a lot more than Kratos is. Kratos just wants to go home. All he ever wants to do is just go home. Yeah. Because what did I say? My favourite bit of dialogue was where like Atreus is like, "Father, do you ever worry that you're doing the right thing?" And he's like, "No." Okay, that's it. Brilliant.
On that, actually,
some of those bits are amazing as well. Like, especially every time you get off the boat when Mimir's telling a story, and Kratos is just like, "Tell the story later. Shut up."
I actually think and this is who did you say that the Kratos voice actor was again?
Christopher Judge.
What I thought was really interesting is when you were talking about that, it jogged my memory that I was thinking about previously, and I actually think you were in this module. It was a Tim Connor module from when we were at university, and we were talking about actors, and it was like the difference between a stage actor versus like an on-screen actor, and they used black guy that's in Shawshank Redemption.
Morgan Freeman
is an example of like a perfect screen actor, because they showed it, I think it was from Shawshank Redemption, in that he does a scene where like he's got very little facial expression, he's got not much sort of tonal shift in his voice, but he manages to portray a scene like in this really dramatic, amazing manner. And I think that Christopher Judge actually does a really good job of that, because he doesn't have a lot of sort of range with Kratos, does he?
No, he can't. But no, the character restricts that. Yeah,
but he manages it somehow. Like
he does.
I felt the emotional beats when it wanted me to feel the emotional beats for the most part, incredibly acutely.
if he obviously he won an award at the Game Awards anyway for best performance. But if you wanted to give an award for like weariest man, done.
Yeah.
There's nobody more weary than Kratos.
Yeah, and I actually think they did a good job of making him feel sort of weary and old and past his best in a way. He's obviously still very, very dangerous, but there's a few moments...
he has to go to bed.
He's got to go to bed,
where Kratos has to go to bed because he's tired.
He just looks...
He wants to go
tired.
home.
Yeah, and there's a couple of times where he just goes, I'm tired. And then like it's little things like...
That's what resonated with me more than the parenting stuff. Just being tired and wanting to go to bed and being old.
There's bits and pieces where he's running and you can sort of hear him grunting and I like, obviously that is... I don't know whether it was deliberate or not, but like to me that was obviously like just felt like a man that was sort of getting on a bit and a bit older. And then there's a couple of times Kratos is like you're doing something and Atreus will say, "Come on, you can go faster than that, or it's not that far. Just get going, you old man," or something along those lines. And I was like, "Oh yeah, he does feel." And then there's another bit at the start where Thor's fighting. And he's like, "Oh, is this the fabled god of war?"
Yeah.
Is this what you've become? You're tired.
You're not fully yourself or whatever. Yeah.
I thought I was done.
This really version of you or whatever. Yeah. Which is ironic coming from Thor.
Yeah. And then the only sort of outstanding thing that I've not done in the game that I'd like to see a resolution to that I probably never will was they never really resolve the lightning bolts as far as I can think of. Like there's multiple lightning bolts and I don't know what happens there. I assume it's a side quest that you'll get to something.
No, I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. I think they were just supposed to be like they explain what they are, something to do with Thor and it's frozen because of Fimbulwinter. I don't know.
The first one you encounter is a frozen one that is where the fight with Thor finishes, but then you encounter you encounter a couple more. So I don't know what's happened with those.
I couldn't even get near one of them.
Are there any like sort of repeating boss encounters that you remember that you really enjoyed? The one that sticks out to me is that I really liked. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a bunch of spirits that it's got like a little eyeball in the middle, and you've got to fight it, and then you damage it, and then you got to go and break a pillar, and then come back. I love those fights. I thought they were really fun.
I think I just found them a little bit easy because I was just cobbing my axe constantly, just stood there throwing an axe and getting Atreus to shoot it. They were quite satisfying though because the sound effects were perfect for it. Every time you smashed that orb, it was really, really good. I can't.
You mentioned the dragon fights that I quite liked as well.
Yeah, the proper flying ones, absolutely. Did you? When I was getting lost in that jungle bit, there was that fucking troll that's throwing rocks at you.
Oh yes.
I could not figure out how to get near that guy for ages. Just doing my head in. He was a right twat.
Is that in the poison flowers that you could only kill? You could only
the ones that just like
fire to them, and they had like little tendrils coming off, and as you're walking by, they'd be like ping, 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 pinging at you, and you're like, go away.
Oh yeah, I forgot how to kill them at one point. I was like, do I have to freeze these with the purple arrows, or can I forgot it's just like somewhere else. They were getting me for ages, and the little like sort of spore things that you just go near and just explode shit me up quite a few times just because you can't really see it because it's just above a chest that you're about to go open. It just pops in his head, like never going to kill you, but really, really annoying.
The skin that Freya had on, I never got over it. It used to bug me. It bugged the life out of me as soon as I noticed it. She didn't wear shoes at any point in the game. She was just walking about in the snow with no shoes on. Really upset me.
That is wild.
Don't know why that just jumped into my head. But yeah, so like
as a Scotsman, you should be able to relate to that.
Oh, I cannot handle it. I still get really sore toes. I went camping in the Cairngorms.
Oh yeah, you do, don't you?
And I woke up in the morning and it was like, I think my sleeping bag was probably not rated low enough to how cold it was. And I just get really sore toes now every time. Every time I get cold feet because of that. I must have almost gave myself frostbite, but not quite.
So yeah, all right, Freya must have angered you even more because you know full well what she's doing to herself.
Exactly. The other thing that I've got here, I've written down a bunch of characters I'm just going to go through just in case there's something we haven't spoken about. I think we've spoken about Atreus. There's nothing really I've got to say about Atreus. Odin, I think we've covered Odin pretty well.
I really liked Odin. I thought he was great. People seem to be down on him because he's not like this all-powerful, massive god, and he's more of just like a...
That made him more fun to me.
Yeah, just like a really sort of dodgy accountant or whatever. But I quite liked him.
The only thing about Atreus actually that we haven't mentioned that I wanted to bring up was I think we spoke about it in our previous podcast. We certainly have spoken about it at some point. That Loki is known as a trickster god, and I was trying to figure out where that would come from. I actually think they did a good job of making him seem quite tricksy and untrustworthy to the Aesir, i.e. like Odin and stuff, and I could see why Thor would look at him and think, oh, he's not to be trusted, because he wasn't. And I guess from their perspective, he did have ulterior motives, and he was up to some sneaky business, and he was...
I suppose so. I suppose his origin is that he's come from being a half-breed of different worlds or different, religions or whatever you want to say. But yeah, I don't know if they went far enough with that kind of stuff for me. I just kept thinking, like, why is he Loki? Like, you think of Loki from like Marvel's Avengers,
I don't,
he's like a right little sneaky bastard. Yeah. He's just like he's nothing like that.
I'm so far out of superhero movies that that doesn't even jump to my mind. Thor, the source material we've spoken about. Thor was great. Sindri, we've kind of spoken about him, haven't we? I don't like the way he turns from being like the kind, nice, forgiving character to being the one by the end of the show that is quite resentful and wrapped up in himself.
Which I don't mind. I mean, there's got to be casualties of the collateral damage that we're causing by destroying all these worlds and whatever, and he's the only one who's really lost anything. I mean, I suppose that you've got hangover loss from the first game from like Freya and Thor or whatever, but he's the only one who really loses anything in this. But he obviously does solely blame basically Atreus for everything.
Yeah, because even to the point that during what we thought was Ragnarok, he appears and he's like, the dwarves aren't coming, we've lost enough. And I was like, yeah, I suppose so. Because like then I remember back to Mimir, he basically like subjugated them all, didn't he? And turned their realm into like this polluted mess. So
he fucked over the elves, he fucked over the dwarves, he fucked over whales. He's a piece of shit, I tell you.
And I just kind of, my thing with that was just kind of thinking like, yes, I can see why you're annoyed and why you've been wronged, but surely you want to fix these wrongs. But by not helping, you're allowing Odin to continue, right?
Yeah, that felt like cutting off your nose to spite your face. For some reason, I didn't really. Yeah, that felt like a very rash decision from him to just sort of be like purposely belligerent and be like, "No, I'm just going to do it by myself. You caused enough shit." But to be fair, he was quite helpful when he threw his little hammer at those things on the wall.
Helpful.
And then smashed up Odin's soul out of nowhere.
Yeah.
No, fuck this. We're not keeping it. You're not putting it in a fucking fox out the court round the corner or a bloody toad. I'm just smashing it. End. I quite enjoyed badass Sindri because normal Sindri's a bit of an annoyance, which is why Brock always tells him to. Yeah, well,
did you notice how dirty he was at the end of the game as well? Because he's
his eyes were always like completely bloodshot. He's obviously just been up crying all night.
The one thing I couldn't get over with Sindri is when he was running, because his shoulder shape in his armor was really odd. He was just like really triangle, and his arms were like, it was almost like they were halfway down his torso. I just couldn't get my head around that.
Speaking of armor, that was probably the worst part of the game, where I can't remember what part it is. I think it may even be the final embrace between Kratos and Atreus, where Atreus' face clipped through Kratos' armor on my game, and I was like, oh, come on. You fucked up the biggest moment of the emotional moment of the game by having some armor coming out of his chin. Stupid.
Oh, I missed that. I didn't get that.
No, I didn't see that on yours.
Freya, we've kind of covered her.
Don't like Freya.
You didn't like her character arc. You thought it was a bit obvious.
Yeah. Just woman scorned into sort of reluctant friend into best lifetime companion.
Yeah, like it was
the BFF.
It was I guess it was the sort of rapidity. She goes from being like eaten alive by hate to you're all right, Kratos. You're a nice guy.
Yeah, because he is all right. Yeah, because her son's a twat who started on him.
Yeah,
and all she had to do was see that, and then she sees that, and she's like, "Yeah, guess so." Yeah. and as you said, we don't know if she reheated the old turtle's tummy, so
yeah,
jury's out there.
Freyr,
Wanker.
He's probably my least favorite character. I just don't think there was any sort of movement with him. He was wisecracker, dead guy. I didn't really get him, and I never until he was like wisecracking in Sindri's house. I never really got a gauge on his personality at all. So it was kind of hard to be upset when he died.
Yeah, he was in there so briefly, and she didn't seem that bothered either.
Thor's daughter was I liked her a lot. I thought she was really fun, and what I liked about that, there's a bit where Heimdall, I keep getting his name mixed up.
Yeah, Heimdall or whatever it was.
Where they have in sort of a little bit of a fight in Helheim. I like that compared to like adult gods, they like Atreus and I forget her name. They looked like kids and they seemed like kids.
Food or something?
Yeah, that's it. I just liked the sort of way that they made them. You felt powerful when you were out and about on your own, but then when you actually butted up against a sort of grown god, you realised that they actually did look like they looked quite small and weak, and I thought that was done really well. Thor's wife, she's all right. She doesn't really have much to her. She's just kind of like a Freya who never really comes around until the very end credits. She does a hard shift, and you just don't see it coming because she goes from thinking, oh, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
And then Tyr, which I guess we never ever knew. Were you expecting him to go wild at some point and become a big axe slinging murderer?
It was the only reason I was sort of hanging on to giving any fucks about him. Just like this guy better put his dick back on at some point because I'm getting really fed up of his like wiener shtick. Where he's like, I can't fight, I won't fight anymore, and everyone's getting their asses handed to him. He's like, I can't get involved. Like, you probably should. You're the god of war, you twat.
It's actually pretty funny. I was when Tyr decided that he was going to fight. I remember I actually said it out loud. I was like, this is like a character shift that makes no sense. And then he was like going, yeah, let's go. I'll open the gates and stuff. And then Brock's like, wait a minute. This makes no sense. And I was like, yes, it doesn't make any sense. And then he obviously got himself stabbed for saying
that. Was quite funny though, because I probably wasn't as like attuned to that at that point. And Brock, I was just like, why is Brock being such an asshole? So I get the fuck out of it. You're talking bullshit. And then all of a sudden, he just does the ultimate heel turn. But maybe I'll allow Tyr's wetness if that's entirely Odin's plan to make him into a complete and utter bitch. Just like, I hate Tyr. He was always an asshole. So when I pretend to be Tyr, I'm going to make him the wettiest wetty that's ever wet. And here we come. So I'll allow that.
Now that I've finished the game, I kept meaning to ask you. We were chatting while you were playing God of War one night. I think I'd probably playing as well. But you started absolutely like giggling your tits off. They were like, this cutscene, and you kept laughing. Do you remember that? You was like, this cutscene's ridiculous, and you just kept laughing, and I was wanting to know what that cutscene was now.
I think that was the bit where you're fighting something where you're at like what is it called? The something of the world?
The Eye of... It wasn't the Eye of the World. Oh, the Spark?
No. Yes. Yeah.
Where you end up in like the underground Elden Ring area.
Yeah, and then you're fighting those like... I don't know what they were in the end, like Valkyrie things, and then the end cutscene is just like, it's like Kratos tag teaming with a fucking bear. At the end, you just stood there and there's a bear behind him. You're like, yeah, bears. I just found that was just utterly, utterly ridiculous. That it's just like, one after another, like taking one shot each. That was really funny. Don't know why.
I think to draw this to a close. My overall thoughts of the game, largely positive. The story I came around hard on, and to the
me too, because it does it.
Yeah, and it does come around. It comes around hard, and the sort of end of that game is like top tier. I think it is overall slightly let down by the flabbiness of the midpoint of the game, which is incredibly flabby. But overall, I don't want to be too negative in this game because I think ultimately it's a top tier game, really really good.
Yeah, the core gameplay absolutely never lets you down.
No,
in this game, it's the like we said earlier, it's the getting to and from places, it's the backtracking, it's the needless side quest stuff. but to actually just be Kratos in a fight is spectacular.
Yeah, and I love how, especially the axe, like how weighty it feels. Like it's a big thing I've got about in games. Like if I'm playing a first person shooter and when I fire a gun and the gun feels sort of lifeless and just floaty and light, I find that a really hard thing to sort of push on through. The guns have to feel right, but they make the feel of these weapons just feel so, I don't know, spot on, like weighty, powerful. I'm not using the V word. Like they just like they've got a heft to them that I really appreciate.
Yeah, they're just meaty and manly. Like Kratos when he's just fucking punching people. Did you ever? How often did you use the left like L2 when you were in rage mode? Ever? No. Really? Lots.
Never.
He just picks up the ground and chucks it at people.
Oh, does he? The ground.
He just picks up a rock out of absolutely nowhere and just fucking lobs it at someone. Because obviously that's normally your aim for like throwing the axe.
Of course, yeah. Never did it. Never thought to even do it.
If you did that as in rage mode, you just pick something up and chuck it at someone. But that was quite funny.
Yeah, that's probably one thing I should have done better. I built my character, like I was saying, based on the parry system, and then just sort of leaned into that hard, and then I just never touched anything else. I got to the point I wasn't even reading what I was unlocking. I was just like, no, it's not what I want. It's not what I want. I just unlocked it because I had the XP, and then just moved on.
Yeah. I ended the game having unlocked absolutely every single skill on every single weapon, maxed out all my special moves to level 3, just fully maxed out absolutely everything. So I wanted to try and make as much style out of the combat as I possibly could. So I was, like I said, I was always frequently swapping between using up all the L1 moves for one weapon, then switching to the next one, then the next one, making sure Atreus was always doing his most powerful stuff. There's so much depth to that, and to the, as you said, to the character building. If you want to engage with it, if you don't want to engage with it, you can just level up one track and it will see you through to the end of the game. But yeah, I really enjoyed kind of being a bit of a stat whore with all of it. Trying to figure out how everything would be useful. There are obviously some stuff you have to ignore because you can't remember everything. But settling yourself into like a certain, I guess I had like almost like a checklist of things to do in every single fight, like charge the ice thing, throw that, then get out the chains, and then after a while chuck all the spears and blow them up, and while they're recovering from that, crows to the face and all that shit. So yeah, I quite like to have a bit of almost like a routine to my fights. Very, very organized fighting.
I ended up actually really, I know mine was quite simplistic, but I actually really ended up quite appreciative of what it was. So like when we've played Souls games in the past, I avoid, it's probably because there's a bit bigger a window in this, but I always have avoided sort of parry builds like the Plague. Whereas like this, I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it.
It's definitely a lot more forgiving in this one.
I just loved
the
when
parry
you
window.
Parried someone and knocked them off their whatever they were trying to do. You just felt so powerful, and I loved it.
Yeah, the double tap shield thing was quite fun as well. When it goes blue, especially when you get that one where he just charges at him and just runs and batters him in the face.
For the next God of War game, we think we spoke about it near the start of the podcast. Would you be quite happy if it turned out that the next God of War was based on Atreus as the main character?
No.
You wouldn't?
No.
I wouldn't either. It's just because he didn't really fit into my playstyle. You can't really go an all-out aggression build. You do need to sort of hang back and use the arrows. And I did start playing Atreus like that. I just found it became less effective as the game went on. I must have just leveled up my character in the wrong way. But that's how I started playing. I was like, I quite like that I've got to play this differently from how you play as Kratos. But I do too. By using R1, I found I whittled enemies down much more quickly than sort of hanging back. And
I do agree with that. Yeah, after a while, you could just do the normal sort of play style of like hit them in the face with a bow. And then I quite liked it. I think I had a lot of the stuff where you could get slow motion activated. So, you could like hit as soon as you got a hit up in the air, you could then slow time down and get some headshots in with the sigil arrows, and then usually get a finisher at that point where he most of the time just do a running kick to their face. But yeah, I enjoy playing. It felt like a lot faster, nippier way of playing the game than it was with Kratos, which is a lot more heavy-handed, brutal style, whereas Atreus was a lot more flippy shit, as wrestling fans would say.
I wonder if we're due another reboot again when God of War eventually comes back.
I feel like they will do that, and they may, like I say, do a spin-off with Atreus.
Yeah, because like
the old,
he's already an old man. You just make him older.
Well, is he going to die of old age? Probably not, I guess. I would be interested to learn about Egyptian gods and stuff because I don't really know a lot about that. That would be interesting to see. And maybe if they, I don't know, he's not going to keep the beard as well, I guess. He's going to, I don't know, maybe he's going to do some fucking eyeliner or whatever it is to give the old black, like, little flicky things like the Egyptians used to have.
He'll get one of those beards that is like a Sindri one that'll be braided and down because that's what Tutankhamun's got, or Hamun. Or
yeah. He may even have to get a tan at that point.
Yeah. Well, he's Greek. He should have one.
He should have one, really. You're right, yeah. It's kind of weird that he doesn't.
Yeah. But I guess that's me.
But I also relate to him because of that as well. We're both pasty, bald, bearded men.
No better way to be, Alex.
Yeah. It's the only way I can be, so.
Just don't call your daughter boy for the first 15 years of her life. Maybe no.
Yeah. I've learned her name. I think I'm all right.
That's me. I think, like I say, overall, great feelings about this game. Glad we've played it. Really rewarding experience eventually. Let down slightly in the middle, but a really, really good game.
Agreed.
Where would it have been if it had been part of our Game of the Year discussion?
It would have been up there for best story, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think it would have been there for best story for me. What won our best story? Can you remember? All those many weeks ago? What was it, 5 days ago?
Have you got your... Oh, let me get it out.
Don't have it.
Your internet's quicker, so you'll probably get there before me.
So Winner's You Compendia of Madness.
Inscription. It's not beating Inscription.
No, Inscription was rocking.
It probably would have been fighting Firewatch for number 2 and probably knocking Prey out of there.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly a better story than Prey. Certainly better delivery as well, I would say. And I guess on that bombshell, I guess in terms of housekeeping, if you're at a loose end and you want another podcast to listen to, head over to your podcast provider of choice and search for a little podcast called Gears Intel. Alex, myself, and KDB have taken up a new, venture. Is that the right word? And we are going to be talking about all things Gears of War over in that corner of the world. So maybe don't expect a Gears of War podcast for a little while on this podcast feed because they'll be popping up in another one.
Yeah.
If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can follow us at Winner Is You Pod. At Winner Is You Pod. Nailed it. And if you want to send us an email, you can send us an email to winnerisyoupodcast@gmail.com. No, it's not. It's a winnerisyoupod@gmail.com. And I just seen we've got 7 emails. It's like, do we have an email? No, it's all Podbean stuff.
Oh.
You can follow Alex on Twitter if you go to @SuperThrillix, and you can follow me on Twitter, which is @DavidSmiley1, SMILLIE. Forgot to spell my own name there. And on my inability to spell my own name bombshell, I've been David, he has been Alex, we have been a Winner's You, and I'm out.
Keep gaming, boy.